Welcome. So I'm here, my name is Nathaniel Whitestone. I'm here with Joseph Ratinam and Swarnalakshmi Ravi and Indra Adnan. And we're exploring the question of what works in neighborocracy. So rather than try to explain what neighborocracy is or tell you anything more about the people that I have the privilege of sitting with, I'd like to go around and let each person introduce themselves. Because I'm going to take the shortest turn and because I'll be playing host today, I'll briefly introduce myself. I work in a business called A Fairer Society, and I've been involved in various things, such as starting the Eco-Village Network of the Americas back in the 90s. And I'm really passionate about supporting the global transition from toxic ways of being powerful to healthy ways of being powerful, which partly means being powerful together. And so the reason that I'm in this conversation and that I've invited these people to have this conversation is because I think each of them is carrying very important parts of that global transition and of what needs to happen. So with that said, Indra?
Hi there, everybody. So I'm Indra Adnan, and I am the founder and co-initiator of a political platform in the UK called The Alternative. And it exists to answer the question, if politics is broken, what's the alternative? And that, obviously that's a question people have been asking for decades, and for many, many different reasons. My own history, just to put you in the picture, is that I am a psychotherapist, and I'm also a writer. And I ran a project for many years called Conflict and Peace Forums. So I've looked over years at how conflict arises and what are the skills we need to overcome those things, or to transform them, I should say. And I also ran and became a consultant in something called soft power. So soft power, I think you understand very well in this group, which is to do with the power of storytelling and the power of narrative, as opposed to the power of guns and money. So I've always had a very, very big question around, where does power lie? Where does agency lie? And I've had that question since I was a very young child, mostly because of many experiences with death in my family, but also moving to the UK as an immigrant and seeing, in a way, a society from the outside, always feeling that I was on the outside of something, but at the same time, feeling, my identity as a global citizen. So I've always been in the big question of, where does power lie? What is the relationship between the individual, their community, and the planet? So to cut a long story short, in the early, what we call the aughties, the early 21st century, I've been part of a political think tank, that was, broadly speaking, a progressive think tank, hoping that politics would be the arena in which I could best learn and exercise power and agency, but was very aware of the dysfunction of British and Western politics. And probably the biggest problem lay in how parties created structures and the relationship of that to democracy. So only 2% of people in the UK, and across the whole of Europe, I should say, are members of political parties. The question is, what's happening with the 98%? And where does the power of the people figure in all of this? And if you think about the big problems that we face, the people have always been portrayed in politics as the problem, or the thing that must be controlled, or the thing that needs to be somehow managed. It's a burden, in a way, on politics. The thing that matters is the economy, and the people that drive it are the masters and the leaders. of the global economy. So I came to a point in the early aughties and in fact the early tens, in which I got to the conclusion that politics is completely broken. And in the UK, probably the really crucial moment was with Brexit, and how communities were so divided by the issues that politics raised, that people became completely manipulable by the media and by stories that were told to them. And at one moment, we even had a murder of one of our MPs. And it got to the point where there was so much fear and danger, if you like, in the country, that, you know, to continue to rely on politics in that way was obviously not a good idea. So we started this project called The Alternative and raised the question, if politics is broken, what is the alternative? And our first observation was that the human being at the heart of our politics is seen as a material being only in need of a roof over its head and food, whereas we understand that human beings are, you know, biopsychosocial spiritual entities, and that they are actually the very core of our society, but also they are the very resource for overcoming all of our problems. So very quickly, in a very short space of time, we came to the conclusion that we need to go right to the communities, right to where the divisions were happening, and to see whether or not we couldn't bring back some agency and bring back some sense of power to people in their communities. And what we build there are something called citizens' action networks. And designing how a citizen action network comes about and how it can work as a complex but meaningful and effective entity has been our challenge. And we've developed all sorts of tools and practices. And we have a process which we call the collaboratory process, in which the aim is to bring all the people across a community, irrespective of class or political divide or any kind of cultural divide, not just to bring them together to find their voice, but to bring them into contact with the solutions that we know are already available. So if we think about the multiple crises of our well-being, our divided communities, and our dying planet, so many of the solutions to these problems are already available, but we don't have any access to them, mostly because we don't have communities of trust. So the people are divided in their communities. They don't experience trust between them, and therefore you can't really bring solutions to them, or they can't avail themselves of solutions because they don't trust each other to collaborate. So this is really our, in a sense, our raw material that we bring to you, and we very much want to learn from you, because when I heard that you've been doing this work for 27 years, it was really humbling, I have to say, because I think we've only failed for 27 years to be doing that in our communities. We have small pockets of success. I don't know if you're familiar with things like transition towns, you know, where small groups of people, I would say, have managed to connect themselves to the solutions that are available, but they're still very small. They didn't succeed really in taking over the imagination of the wider population. And so there's a lot of work to be done of engaging others and learning the tools of collaboration. So that's really us. And I want to, you know, I'm looking forward to asking you lots of questions about how you've managed to do what you've done. And I've got one more thing I want to bring to the table, which is at this moment of coronavirus, and also in the fact that we've all been pursuing the SDG goals for some time, the Sustainable Development Goals. There is very, very little, there's a lot of worry and anxiety about hearing about how underprivileged people will be at the receiving end of these problems, that they will suffer the most. But sometimes when I'm hearing that question, what I hear is no sense of the resources that are available amongst the people themselves. It's always an aid question. How can the privileged people help the underprivileged people? There's always this direction of travel. But what I'm really wanting to hear about is the resources that are available and how you bring together human resources and potential.
Yes, how can you help us?
Yeah, exactly. Or teach us. How can you teach us? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so I think we can all, as we start to explore this and hear from you, Joseph, and Swarnalakshmi, I think our listeners will really be able to make these connections. I was wondering, just because of our timeline, Joseph, could you start and then maybe hand over to Swarna when you came on the scene historically, in a sense?
Yeah. Greetings to all of you. I am Joseph Ratinam from Chennai, India. And very briefly to talk about me, about 30 years back, I was a businessman. I was doing exports, imports. Then at one point of time, that is about 1991, I started my own political party in Tamil Nadu, thinking that I have to do something for people. And at that time, when the only thing what I came across was having a political party under my control of my own, with my own cadres, that I can do a lot for people. But once I registered the party, once I started the party, then slowly I came into contact with the mainline political leaders, and I learned a lot of things from them. And I was a very young person at that time, so many mainline political leaders were very happy to associate with me and all. Then I realized party politics cannot do much for people, because whomever I met, whether state level political party leaders or the national level political party leaders, they were talking always about power, which is always again connected with money. And when I realized that money and power, political power and money power, cannot come closer to creating a solution for people's problem, then I was trying to read a lot about party politics. And two things which impressed me in my life at that time was one reading from Ambedkar. He says, even if a saint comes down from heaven to start a political party, he cannot change the system, but the system will change him. And he has made this statement. And he explains this statement. That is, if you have to run a political party, you need money. And if you need money, you'll have to stretch out your hand. Once you stretch out your hand for money, you'll have to compromise. Once you compromise, all your ambitions, objectives of helping people will disappear. And you cannot. And then I realized that then how am I going to help people by having political party? Then I was reading various people, political experts. Then I was coming through one writing from Mahatma Gandhi also, which impressed me a lot. He says, a centralized power cannot do much for the people at the lower level. So always the power has to be decentralized one. It has to start from the basic, from the bottommost, then it has to be federated at the higher level. And he says 20 people at the center cannot decide the political, social, economical fate of 40 crores people, those who are living on the bottom of the society. And when he was talking, 40 crore was the population of India. Then I said, then the governance has to start from below. Then he talks about Kram Rajya. Kram Rajya means governance from the villages, governance from below. Then I was thinking, party politics cannot do much. There should be people's politics, where even the last person in the society, in the periphery of the society, has to have an assertive say in day-to-day governance. Then I was wondering how we are going to create that, because democracy is believed to be the best form of governance. And when democracy has failed, when I was reading James Madison, he very clearly mentions how democracy has failed. Then when I said democracy has failed, then what is the next step? And what Indra was talking about, the alternate. And I was thinking about it about 27, 28 years back. What is alternate? What is an alternative? Where even the last person in the street will have an assertive say in day-to-day governance. Then when I was looking for some option, then somebody introduced me to one Catholic priest, Father Edwin, who already was talking about this, about neighborhood parliaments, governance from below. Then I met him. Then I was with him for a few days. I interacted with him. I learned a lot of things from him. Then slowly I invited my own people, my own groups of friends to him to have a number of trainings and all. Then once I got convinced about it, this is the best way to make people's politics, where even the last man can have an assertive say in day-to-day governance. Then I said, this is what I was looking for. Then I joined him and I was with him. Then I wrote the first book on Neighborocracy. Then I wrote another book for the animators for the training. Then I started the training various group of people on this.
And I'm just going to interject. So when Joseph says animators, in the UK, we might understand that as with the word organizers.
Organizers.
I mean,
organizers.
Animators is the right word for you. I'm just saying so other people know as well.
Yes. Thank you, Matt. And that's how we started. And from then onwards, I've been fully into it, and I've taken this as my mission, and nothing has disturbed me. Then I was editing and publishing a monthly magazine for Children's Parliament, because Children Parliament is a basic foundation for neighborocracy towards the neighborhood parliaments. So that's how we started, and from then onwards I am at it, and it is my life, and I think always about it. And very lately I also very seriously working on Joy Life, and Joy Life is personal transformation which leads to societal transformation. And societal transformation cannot take place without the individual's personal transformation, So I am working on it, and it will be introduced soon also. Then from then onwards, I am at it. I go to various places and I become the tool, perhaps, to introduce this to so many thousands of organizations all over India. And I have trained so many thousands of field workers and organizers, and even in the schools, teachers and things like that. And I am at it now. And I feel the more and more people are involved in this, and when I see the success which has been brought out by Children's Parliament and the Adult Parliament, Neighborhood Parliament, and see this is the thing which has to be promoted everywhere, and that's how I do. And I am at it always. I am available 24 hours a day on this, for this. And I just hand over to Swarna for her introduction.
First of all, greetings, and it's been really very good to hear from Indra and Joseph Sir, whom I know. Joseph Sir is a person whom I know for around 9 years since I'm sorry, since I joined this parliament, and I'm right now serving as a global convener for the youth parliaments to be formulated in different places, and I've been a former national child prime minister for the children's parliament. Currently, I'm pursuing my master's in international relations and global governance at Aston University. The reason for me, my connection towards my curricular and my connection towards the extracurricular is a very interesting thing, which I would like to start back from a decade ago. So, 10 years ago, I was doing grade 7, and at that point of time, I was just thinking to myself that as children, what power do I have? This thought appeared into my mind when I was quite suppressed. When I stood up for asking questions, I was suppressed. And when I was trying to argue something, I was suppressed by saying, well, you are a child and you don't know anything. We all know that children are more powerful than oil, more beautiful than rivers, and more precious resource, precious natural resource that a country can have. But what is there to prove myself? That question arose into my mind. And I've been struggling with this for a year. And when I was in grade 8, this children's parliament was introduced into my school. And I took this as an opportunity to get involved. After joining the children's parliament, I was elected as a communication minister. And as a child, as a communication minister, I was given the responsibility of every day watching news and then reporting them whatever is happening. When I started watching news continuously, many things occurred into my mind. The thought of serving to the society, the thought of serving to the needies, and in fact, after watching news, I realized that this society is not the way that I think, because I was just limited to my home and school. The news really gave me wider perception of what the society is. And then I decided to get involved more actively in this children's parliament. This took me to the state level children's parliament and made me as its finance minister. I was quite happy. I felt as if that I'm elected as a real finance minister. But one thing was insisted in the parliament is, number one, as a finance minister, you shouldn't consider yourself as in that you are in a posting, but you should consider yourself that you are entitled to a responsibility, which really intrigued me. Number two, respect everybody's consent, everybody's opinion, which was also interesting to me because I was suppressed earlier and my opinions were suppressed. And now we could talk to each other and we could respect each other's opinion, which was interesting. As a finance minister with my peers, I got the opportunity to do things like wherever people are affected with cyclone, we were able to provide them with stationery. So there is a village called Cuddalore, there's a district called Cuddalore, where the cyclone was quite seriously affected, and that district was provided by children with some stationeries, which increased my confidence that children do have power, and this is the right platform to prove the power of the children by even without neglecting or ostracizing the voices of the last child. And then this took me to the Prime Minister of the state level Children's Parliament. And as a Prime Minister, I was honored to be provided with the opportunity of addressing United Nations for the first time. When I entered into United Nations at the age of 13, I was asked by New York Times that how I feel. I just said, I feel responsible. They asked me, don't you feel nervous? I said, no, not at all, because I know my responsibility as a Prime Minister of not only my state level Children's Parliament, but the millions of children who are not only in my country, in my place, but in all over the world. And I would like to take this responsibility and do it in a more, in however powerful that I could do, and in however responsible that I could do. So responsibly that I could do. So I then went to the national level Children's Parliament after continuously addressing United Nations for even a couple of more times. And as a National Child Prime Minister, I also got opportunity to lobby with around 50 ambassadors of different embassies to whom I advocated of this Children's Parliament and the principles of it. So basically, I was quite intrigued about the 5 interesting principles of Children's Parliament, which are uniformity, small in size, recall whenever is needed, subsidiarity, and convergence. So with these 5 principles, I was quite intrigued, and then I advocated this Children's Parliament to around 50 other ambassadors, and then eventually I also got one more opportunity to address the UPR session, the Universal Periodic Review session in the United Nations. And finally, I thought to choose I thought to interconnect my curricula with this co-curricular activity, for which I chose BA Political Science in my college. And right now, I'm doing my master's in international relations, furthering to the subject. And looking forward to answering more questions from Indra and others. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you both. And just for the people that are sort of viewing this or listening to this who haven't encountered the Neighborhood Parliament's story before, there are now about 400,000 neighborhood parliament groups, and about 200,000 of them are using the organizing system or governance system called sociocracy. So we can come back to what that means, and I'm sure it will come up during our conversation. But I wanted to mention this because it's useful to think about, when Swarna says, I'm representing millions of children, that there's, there are hundreds of thousands of groups that she was directly representing at that time. But having said that, Indra, would you like to lead us into the questions?
Yes, thank you both very much. I mean, I'm trying to absorb because what you've set off for me is this sense of quite complex systems that exist from the grassroots upwards. And we're using a lot of words that I want to explore a bit more. But immediately what I sense is that you're developing a culture of responsibility right at the grassroots. And that is, it's almost shocking to hear because it's so very different from the way that we think about people and people's power in the UK. We're really thinking about irresponsibility, actually, mostly. you know, the lack of responsibility. So in a way, what you're describing is the very thing. The only danger for us is that with the imbalance of power, when you imagine many, many people taking responsibility, some people will say that relieves others of their responsibility. So I'd like, if you could, to just begin at that really essential level, both of you. And I don't really know, in practical terms, I don't know the relationship between the children's parliaments and the neighborocracy. I know they are related, but I wonder how they work within a community. What is the relationship of responsibility, actually? So it doesn't really, I don't have a clear question. So any sort of, you know, thinking and talking about that notion and how it plays out would be really helpful to me.
Well, sir, could I go ahead and then
Yes,
would you like
please.
to take
Yes.
Well, I think neighborocracy is basically neighborocracy was derived from two words: one, neighborhood, and cracy. So, so cracy is derived from kratos, which we all know as rule, and neighborhood is the families who are closely living to us. Most of the times, we wouldn't have even explored our own families who are living close to us. So it is basically connecting those families, bringing them together, and around people or children from basically children's parliament is a movement, and neighborocracy is a theory that's applied in this movement. So that's the shortest way of answering this question. And neighborocracy was, I think, founded by Joseph Sir, and we are applying this theory by taking children from 30 families, and then we come together on a common platform. We discuss the issues that we see around us and try to resolve them. And if 30 of such neighborhoods emerge, after the emergence of 30 of such neighborhoods, representatives will be chosen from each of the neighborhoods with everybody's consent, and they'll be taken up to formulate a village level parliament. And if 30 or more than such village parliaments emerge, and the representatives similarly will be chosen to formulate panchayat, or I don't know how you call it in UK, county level parliament. So like that, it just goes on and on to the top level. But the representative, the interesting thing is the representative who are from the neighborhood, who has gone up to the village level parliament, would not only serve as a representative to the village level parliament, but also connects the neighborhood parliament. For example, if an issue appears or occurs into the neighborhood parliament, they would take that issue up to the village level, and something, if a measure has to be implemented from the village level parliament, they would then take that to the neighborhood level. And so, in other words, the representative of neighborhood and village level parliament would serve as an intermediary between both those levels. And similarly, it just goes up to the top level.
And does that go all the way? How high does it go ultimately? Is there a regional and national level as well, or how? Yes. So keep going.
In the Indian context, I will explain to you. We start with neighborhood level, then they are federated at the village level, then they are federated, the representatives from village level are elected and federated at the block level. We call it block here. From block level, representatives are taken to the district level. Then district level representatives select their representatives to the state level. From the state level, the state level parliament elects their representative to the national level. So these are the 7 levels from neighborhood to national level. And again, to explain, since there are a lot of viewers, perhaps for the first time, for them to understand what it is, what neighborhood parliament it is. Neighborhood parliament consists of people, those who live in the immediate neighborhood of say 30 or 40 families or less than 30 families. Averagely, we have this number as a common number, 30, because it's there should be some uniformity, so we have it, and more than 30, it will be a big crowd. The idea is that even the last voice should be able to have a type of interaction with everyone. Even the smallest voice can be heard. If it is more than 30, then only the bigger voice can be heard. So when we say neighborhood, everyone in the neighborhood has to be part of it, irrespective of their social status, educational status, or economical status, whatever it is. If they live in a particular neighborhood, they have to be part of it. And once they are formed, they elect their ministers. So various ministers will be elected, starting from the Prime Minister, then Home Minister, Health Minister, Education Minister, and now we have ministers connected with SDG also. They're very much connected with SDG. Then we have a Minister for Disability Concern, Minister for Child Right, and Minister for so many things, and peace building, and for even their other issues, whichever is more severe issues, they're all elected, and everyone is elected as a minister. Not even one person is left without ministership, that is without responsibility. So everyone is responsible for something or other in this. So every week they conduct their regular meeting, regular systematic meeting, with all the records of a discussion and all that. Everything is maintained properly. So every week they have the meeting. In the meeting, every minister brings out the problem connected to their department. For example, the finance minister will come out saying that, okay, I had taken the survey in the neighborhood and I find 4 or 5 families poor with less income. So the finance minister's job is to ensure that poverty is eradicated there. So the whole group works together how to come out with certain plans so that the poverty can be eradicated. These poor families or the families with less income can be supported such a way that they can have a better income, a decent income, so that the poverty can be eradicated. The health minister will work out about everything connected to health and hygiene. And the education minister will work out anything connected with illiteracy and the dropouts, school dropouts, or the school facilities, and even recommending certain courses. I mean, special trainings for the teachers, and organizing group discussion among the teachers and all that. So many things are connected with that. So similarly, we have Minister for Child Right, Child Welfare. Then we have Minister for Disability Concern, which is very important role. Then we have Minister for Climate Action. We call them Environment Minister. So these ministers, take up the job of planting trees, taking care of the trees, eradicating this plastic usage, and water management, saving water, saving electricity, promoting the renewable source of energy, and all the so many things are connected with that. So like that, every minister has his or her role to play in this. So that's how this neighborhood parliament functions. So that they work together to ensure that everyone lives a joyful life, a life without any problem whatsoever. And any societal problem or any individual problem starts from the neighborhood. So the solution also can be found only in the neighborhood. A third party solution from outsiders cannot be a permanent solution. So that's why we say the solution has to be found by the neighborhood people themselves. So that's why they have to come together regularly. And by coming regularly, what happens is the relationship is built and they become more closer to each other. The more closer they become to each other, less, more concerned for others, happens. They become more other-centered. The feeling from I feeling changes into we feeling. That type of relationship is built. Then they try to understand each other's needs better, try to care for each other better, try to understand the problems the individuals face better. It sits from sympathy to empathy, working together to, to address any particular issue, even any individual issue. So that's how they function. And everyone is accountable to the parliament. And if there is one person having no responsibility, that person is enough to create trouble. So that's why we want everyone to be responsible for something or other. So we have Minister for Peace Building. We have Minister for Talent Development and Training. Then we have Minister for Eradication of Alcohol Use, Drug Use, and all these things. Then we have Minister for Eradication of Corruption. Then through this, we also say that even terrorism can be addressed successfully, because a terrorist is a faceless person. He all of a sudden he comes from somewhere and he lives in a particular place and bombs somewhere and he disappears. But when this system is built, a faceless person cannot remain. Everyone is known to each other. So a person without any past history cannot, survive or exist. So if a person leaves from this neighborhood to going to next neighborhood, another place, by shifting his residence, the new neighborhood will ask for some credentials from the previous neighborhood. So the previous neighborhood will say, okay, he was our so-and-so minister, so he is an asset this way. So he is introduced to some other. So nobody can remain a faceless person. Secondly, any issue faced by individuals also solved here, taken care here. So there is no any ill feeling or dissatisfaction for the person that he gets into antisocial activities. He need not get into. So that's how this all function. To create this system of governance, I mean, they take care of the governance of the neighborhood, take care of the safety, security, development, everything. So this system of governance has to start as a habit, as it has to be inbuilt character. So we say this has to be started from the childhood. That's why we formed the children's parliament. From the same 30 families, there are children. From 6 to 18, they are made into children parliament, and they are trained on this. How to build the relations, how to look for others' problems, and how to care for others, how to share the concerns with others, how to share everything with others, how to have a good relationship, how to accept others as equals, and all that. And also the children themselves, they themselves have power. They are actual citizens of the country. They are not to be sidelined. So the neighborhood parliament also has to listen to children, what the children feel about issues. So in a neighborhood, there will be a neighborhood parliament for adults, then children parliament. And this children parliament also send their representative, not only their higher level children parliament, but to the neighborhood parliament of the adult also. So that child representative from the children parliament to the neighborhood parliament will share the opinions and suggestions given by the children with the adult neighborhood parliament, so that they take care of the issues. And similarly, from the neighborhood parliament, there will be one minister in charge for the children's parliament of that particular neighborhood, to ensure that the children are trained properly and they take up issues. So they collaborate with each other. They jointly work. So though they have their meetings separate, by interlinking connections and representatives, they work together. So that governance system becomes holistic. And by being federated at the higher level, for example, from the village, neighborhood level, they elect their representatives to the village level. So there will be a village level parliament similarly. All the ministries will be there for all the issues and for all the SDGs. So that parliament at the village level is in charge for the whole village. Similarly, the next level, panchayat level parliament, that parliament having similar portfolio, similar ministries, but in charge for the whole panchayat. So similarly, block level, then district level parliament will be in charge for the whole district, then state level, national level, and we want it at the global level. So that this global level parliament will be in charge for every issue at the global level. Any action from the lower level will happen, decision from the lower will happen at the lower level. Action has to be taken care by the lower level. Whichever actions cannot be taken at the lower level, we can be taken to the higher level. So there are certain things which cannot be handled by the neighborhood level. Only the village level can handle. So those issues can be handled by village level. Similarly, at various levels. So that's how this system of governance we propose, and we call this system of governance as neighborocracy. As Swarnalakshmi beautifully explained, the neighborhood, I mean governance starting from neighborhood, rule of the neighbors. So that's what we mean by that. And of course, there are a lot of things and lot of success stories which we can share with you all. And definitely in the future, we will be sharing it. And one question you also, Indra, had said at the last sentence in your introduction. Definitely, I will answer that also.
Adding more to what Sir said, I think minister is something, there is a massive difference between power and responsibility. If a child is provided with sense of power, or if a person, let's keep it this way, if a person is provided with a sense of power, then it means that he has control over everybody and could take any decision on his own. But responsibility is something that is inculcated into us, which allows us to listen to others, and which allows us to take decision consulting others. And it's basically a mutual sense. And moreover, the responsibility not only makes you to think just a minute. Can I turn on this? Yeah, so responsibility is basically a mutual thing, and it also means that we all have to possess it, and the entire thing is the entire country or the entire world belongs to us, and we really have to work for it. It is not I who work. I think Sir beautifully said the ethos part. The ethos is not just I, but it's just we. So basically, responsibility is mutuality, but power is something that just relies upon myself. And so, this doesn't mean that there shouldn't be a connection between power and responsibility. There has to be a connection between power and responsibility so that we could accomplish governance. A power without responsibility is like a sort of sky without stars, but responsibility without power is like a tree without roots. So basically both are important, both should have mutual connection.
So in terms of, in respect of the terms which we use may sound a bit different for the other countries, like the parliament. The parliament, the word parliament comes from the Latin word parlare, that means to speak, which means parliament means a platform where people can come together to speak. That's why we use this, besides the political connotation. And when we use the term minister, again, the Latin word, it comes from the Latin word ministrare, which means to serve. So a minister means a servant, a person who is responsible to serve. That's why we use this term. And of course, in the political meaning, minister means, power. But power can be exercised only when people hold the responsibility of serving others. When they do that, the power automatically comes. It is not the power, bossing over somebody or imposing things on somebody. That is not power. That is arrogance. That is not power. That is arrogance. Real power is service. And here in neighborhood parliament or children parliament, we use the principles of the sociocracy. Whether the election of the ministers or decision-making process, whatever it is, we use always the socio-critical method of elections or decision-making. That is objectionless, consent-based decision-making process or objectionless and consent-based election. That's how we use. That's how sociocracy is very much connected with neighborocracy. And neighborocracy can be also explained beautifully this way also. Neighborhood parliaments, neighborhood governance with sociocracy. That's, that can be explained that way. So you can, Indra, you can continue with your questions.
I mean, it's very moving to imagine. It sounds very utopian to me. And you are answering a lot of the questions without theory because you're already doing it in practice. So, I've spent too long listening to people saying about what should happen or what needs to happen. And you're just telling us what has happened, right? And what I want to understand from that is, well, I've got two questions at two ends of your movement. First of all, what power do you think you have at the national level to influence? You have soft power. I understand that. The power of story, the power of your example. You are being the change. All of that, and it's very, very powerful, right? But what influence do you have over hard power? The resources, the money, the military. I mean, describe what you think your ability to serve. What does it result in for you at a national level? So that's just one question, and maybe at the other end of the same question is. How much, what sort of percentage do you think now that you have? I don't know enough to know exactly quickly what percentage of your population you feel are involved in this at the moment. And is it growing? How does it grow? Yeah, so I'm looking really now at, I use this word agency because, that for me is more of a neutral term that we can all share. But doesn't take its eye off the fact that things have to change. We need to be able to change things. You know that, we all know that. So what agency do you have as a movement? Really, for example, to meet the SDG goals, how do you feel you're connected to that? Sorry, that's very big questions I'm asking.
Yes.
And I apologize for interjecting, but when you ask the question about hard power, and we're talking about global political movements, I think it's very important to emphasize that our movement has no interest in overthrowing any elements of the current political order. That this is very much a complementary system to support existing democratic governments. And the reason that I say this is because if we're successful, people will be looking to videos like this one to explore this question. It may be that there's an assistant to a prime minister somewhere that will be watching this video in the future. And so I just want to be very clear that whatever hard power we might be exercising, or any of us might be exercising through any of our neighborhood parliament systems, it's very much complementary to the existing power structure and making us all more effective in collaborating together rather than replacing it. So I apologize for jumping in here, but I have in mind some different possible viewers, and I wanted to speak to them. with that said, if I'm wrong, please disagree with me out loud, Joseph, or just say whatever it is you wanted to say.
And can I qualify my question then? Because I think it was necessary to say what you said there, Nate, because it could be misunderstood. But I was already asking the question as a soft power question: what influence do you have? How do you reach your outcomes? Because in some cases, in some cultures, the idea that your role is simply advisory, right, would not be. I think this says more than that. I think it's more than simply advisory, and that's what I mean by soft power. If you're telling a new story about agency, it actually shifts the whole culture. That's the way that I'm perceiving what you're doing. It certainly is what would be happening in our country if we actually had a democracy in which people felt every one of them was playing a role like you described. That would shift agency to the people. So this distinction between, hard power, which you're identifying with governments, and soft power, which you're at this moment identifying with the people, I think that's a false division myself. I think everything changes when people have more power and responsibility. And that's my question, really. How do you see it?
Yes. It's a beautiful question and a very complex and a very, very deep questions with a lot of explanation needed on this. First of all, when we talk about power, we talk about political power.
Yeah.
This political power comes from where? From the people. Because democracy is by the people, for the people, of the people. And nothing beyond people. Political power cannot be exercised just from the sky. Only when the people vote and elect somebody to rule, they get the power. So they get the power from the people. And if the people decide to have the power with themselves, then the elected representative will not have any power.
Yeah, exactly.
So it is the power of the people.
Mm.
So they decide. If they decide to hold the power with themselves, we say, no, we don't do it. We will do it for ourselves. And we start exercising our power and we start doing it. And there is no way out for the political leaders come to the knees. They have to come down to the knees. There is no way out. That's why they are very clear about when the election comes, they keep on saying, please vote, please vote. Why to vote? We vote for ourselves. That's all. We vote. Okay, we vote for ourselves. Because, see, in democracy, it is designed such a way that only the big voices can be heard. Only moneyed voice can be heard. So that the ordinary, so see, it's very beautifully explained by James Madison. He says, democracy is a conspiracy by the rich people. He says, in order to hold political power in their hand permanently, seek the consent of the vast majority. That is what democracy, he says. And that is very true. Very, very true. So for the political power, a politician, I say I was a party politician. If I have to get that power, people have to vote me. As long as people say that I am a leader, I am a leader. And people reject me as a leader, I am no more a leader. I cannot claim myself, saying that I am a leader. No, people don't. So the power comes from the people. So once the power structure is prepared such a way that the people themselves have the power to decide things for themselves, and all other agencies like bureaucracy and the political class, all to support this power center, then the whole equation will change. Whole equation will change. And for that matter, any political leader also lives in a particular neighborhood. And he has to belong to a particular neighborhood parliament. And he cannot shy away or do away with the neighborhood because he lives in a particular neighborhood. He may be living in a big mansion which is constructed in 10 or 15 acres, but that mansion also has a neighborhood. It belongs to a particular neighborhood. So when these neighborhood things happen, he has to be part of that. So the politics will be there, but party politics will not be there. People's politics will be there. So the power is always with the people, one thing. Secondly, when we talk about money, and the money and power goes together. And this, when we talk about money in today's context, the political power gets money from where? From the people. They cannot print their own money. They have to collect money from the people in way of various taxes. So it is people's money which these people enjoy. It is people's money on which they plan. Then we have corporates. Corporate cannot thrive without people's money. So corporates also thrive on people's money only. And bankers, they also thrive on people's money only. Whether the political dispensation or the corporates or the bankers, everyone's live on people's money. So if you go deep into that, the power also belongs to people. The money also belongs to people. But only those who enjoy the power of the people and the money of the people are different groups. That is a tragedy in the whole system of governance. Once the neighborhood governance starts, they will say, we will have our own money. I mean, our own economy. So that's why we call it community economy. You know, community marketing, community economy, which has to be designed and decided by the community itself, the neighborhood parliament itself. So once that happens, the whole, the whole understanding what we have about power and money will, will have a very big shift. Very big shift it will have.
I want to press pause for a moment because we have Kingsley here. And I should also mention that we have 15 minutes left. This has gone so quickly. I really want to sit here for another 2 hours and have more of this conversation.
Yes, very good.
But I wonder if we could just hear a brief hello from Kingsley. Kingsley, can we hear from you? And would you like to turn your video on? It might not be possible. If we only have your picture, Kingsley, it's nice to have your picture with us.
Yeah, it's very friendly.
If you do have the chance to speak, if you can find a way to speak, then please interrupt us, Kingsley. But knowing that we have 15 minutes left, I'm happy to turn it back over to you, Joseph, but I just also wanted to make sure that all of us have time to say a last few words.
Yes, exactly.
Whatever we want to wrap up.
Yeah, I will run through very fast regarding the question what the second one is what Indra had asked about whether these parliaments have only advisory role. No, it has no advisory role. It has an action role. Takes charge of the governance itself. And to advise these people, to support these people, we have the bureaucracy and the political dispensation. All that is to support this. So this is not an advisory, but a neighborhood parliament that doesn't have an advisory role, but an action role. With the support of the bureaucracy, official lineage, and the present political dispensation. And that's how it is. And when we come to the percentage of population in India, we have about 135 crores also now. But in comparison to that, what we have done is very, very, very little. And in the highest time, about 10 years back, we had about 200,000 children's parliament, and few about 250,000 neighborhood parliament in Kerala, but not exactly in the sense what we design or we define, but they have these neighborhood groups organized. That's about 250,000 in Kerala alone. Now it is being spread in many places, and of course in only in hundreds. So that's how it is. And there was another question about how this in the present corona context, how people, those who are in the marginalized, this thing, can be, their problem can be addressed in this. If there was already a neighborhood parliament established anywhere, definitely there, the referral services, the remedial services, all could have been taken place better than anywhere else. Because there is a health minister, and there is a medical minister, and there is a training minister for training and creating awareness and all that. And there is a finance minister. For example, now we have people living on the road, homeless people, and there is they're not cared at all. But yet there is a system in this, there is a minister, and there won't be any homeless person. He will be belonging to any particular neighborhood, and his financial need will be taken care by the finance minister of the neighborhood. So all the issues, whatever we think, would have been completely taken care by the neighborhood parliaments if it was existing earlier. Yeah, even not only that, even this mental health issue today in Europe and American countries, if there is a neighborhood parliament, there is a minister, elders care minister. You know, now most of these mental health issues happen because there is no one to listen to the elders. There is no one to listen to them, to care for them, to talk to them, to, you know, the elders, if they come out, pour out things to somebody, they will, you know, they feel more peaceful, more comfortable. And further, there is no situation today. But if there was a neighborhood parliament already existing, there is, you know, remedial service for it, for all that, so that even mental health issues can be successfully addressed through this. Yes.
And also adding more to Sir, as children, we have also addressed so many issues of such, and we have, gone to the bureaucracy. And I think Indra also asked a question that, how do you address hard power? Hard power could also be addressed through soft power, I guess, because you just go and speak to them. Just by speaking, they just get convinced because of what we were doing and what we are doing and what we wish to do. What we wish to be doing. So it's basically, for example, in my experience, when I lobbied with the ambassadors, they just put forth so many questions that, how do you implement this? How do you, how would you want to implement this in United Nations? For all those questions I just said, well, this is how we are implementing in the neighborhood level. For example, as Sir has explained, like what is minister, what is parliament, what is power, what is responsibility, and what we would like to inculcate and what we would like to bring it into into the United Nations. So that's how I explained to the ambassadors, and they were really intrigued, and they said they wish to even take this up to whatever is possible. So even they themselves get convinced by listening to soft power. So it's basically all about talking about action to the bureaucracies. That's when they are getting impressed and they are trying to contribute. Recently, I had the opportunity to send a letter to the mayor of Telford. So you can ask me, what I think you've also addressed the question that, what do you mean by power? The power is this. So the Children's Parliament teach us that you have the power to send a letter to the mayor. And if I had not been associated in this Children's Parliament, I wouldn't have known that I could even speak to the mayor, and I could send a letter to the mayor saying that we would like to establish a Children's Parliament network here in UK. So due to which I immediately got a response, which is also increased my confidence. Like, we are interested in your children's parliament. We already have a British youth parliament through which you can get connected, and he gave the contacts, and it's just like going on and on. We are trying to establish a communication between them. So it's very interesting. So bureaucracy also would get involved when we are interested in the action and when we know to utilize our power. The power that I mean here is whatever the power we possess. For example, sending a letter to bureaucracy, talking to them, narrating our story, all those things. So, moreover, in these children's parliaments, we have, starting from neighborhood, we have done things like even children have eradicated alcoholism, eradicated child marriages, eradicated the child labor practice. Recently, one of our friends, who was called Nyana Shekhar, who just, when he saw 22 children standing in the bus stop, he just picked them up, and then he knew to utilize this power. He just went, spoke to the child helpline. The child helpline came and rescued. So the power is this, to know to utilize, that's it. And even in fact, I also have, when I was just traveling by car to my school, I just felt that at 7 o'clock in the morning, it was quite daylight. So it was quite, the daylight was on, but still the electric lights were on in the streets. It was not switched off. So I felt the responsibility here, that the responsibility of switching off these lights. So now, after joining this children's parliament, I know that to whom to be contacted to turn this power off. So I just contacted the electric board, letting them know that, well, sir, there is a problem here. The power is being wasted, the resource is being wasted here. So could you please turn this lights off? And if so many of such lights are on, then eventually it would result in the wastage of power. So as a child, I feel my responsibility. So could you please turn this off? And they did it. After doing it, they also felt a bit of joy, and they just immediately contacted me and said, well, we have done this. It is basically responsibility, not only towards us, but to the society. That's what I meant by responsibility. And power is just to know to utilize.
It's so very impressive what you say. And, you know, I really want to dwell more on your examples, but obviously this is not the time. I'm going to hand back to Nathaniel, but I didn't want to not reflect immediately, you know, how powerful, to use a word, that sounds to me. The question of responsibility, how do we develop responsibility? That's a really big question for me, and we'll have to pick it up in our next call.
Wonderful. Well,
but for a simple answer, can I share something?
Yeah.
As charity begins at home, responsibility also begins at home and neighborhood.
Yeah, that's nice. And I would say that that's beginning to spring up in the COVID crisis in exactly that way that you're describing.
So we could steal the Spider-Man line and say, with great neighborhood comes great responsibility. But we just have a last few minutes here, and I wanted to briefly outline some connections between the work that we're all doing. Really not for us, because I think all of us know this, but maybe if somebody's watching this in the future. You know, so Indra and I are both part of a control shift network, and the conversation that Indra's been convening around the alternative in the UK. And obviously, you know, Joseph and Swarnalakshmi, you two are really leading in the global children's parliaments and neighborocracy movement. And I'm involved with all of these things through the three of you and through my involvement in the sociocracy world and through eco-villages and transition towns as well, which unfortunately are, as you say, Indra, small, beautiful spots in a very large gray landscape. I guess what I'm wanting to say is I really see this powerful emergence, especially through the neighborhood parliaments movement, but through a lot of other movements, the cooperative movement in the UK being another really wonderful example. And it's very inspiring for me to be able to be some part of the connection between these different movements that each really have so much to add to the world, but when they're woven together, their power and our collective ability to take responsibility for the whole, the largest whole, of which we're all part, just grows so substantially. So I'm really looking forward to doing more learning and more work with all three of you. And I hope this is the start of several more conversations that the four of us have together. And Kingsley too, although unfortunately we only have your fantastic picture here, Kingsley. Does anybody else have a last word or two that they want to say before we wrap up?
Yes, yes, Nat. I want to thank you and Indra for this wonderful meeting, and of course Swarnalakshmi for sharing her experiences and lots of ideas. And I'm so happy that there are so many people, those who are interested in this alternative system of governance, which Indra has been working for so many decades, you know, for alternate. What is alternate? And we have, it's so high time, and I feel so excited that you have connected us all together. And you have done a wonderful job, and I am so grateful to you. And I really look forward to work with you, Nat and Indra and Swarna. Definitely, we all can together bring a lot of changes in many ways, in many aspects of the political arena, of the social arena, whatever it is, in for the whole world. Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you very much, Indra Adnan, and thank you, Joseph Sir, for organizing this amazing meeting. And thank you, Nate, for facilitating it. It was really amazing to know about Alternative UK, and it's my privilege to be here in UK. I think this might make the connection a bit more easier. So probably looking forward to connecting with Indra and a social activist like her. So it's my privilege to get connected, and would like to do more in future. Thank you. It's been lovely talking to you, and looking forward to knowing more about Alternative UK apart from website. And also your other side as a psychotherapist is quite interesting. So yes, of course, in future, looking forward to connect that.
Thank you. I want to add my thanks. I know we're running out of time, but I feel sincerely humbled, I must say, by what I've been introduced to today. Makes me very hopeful for the future, and it also makes me feel very ambitious, I have to say, about what could be achieved in a moment of grief for people. Maybe we can also leap forward in some way, and I sense that from our new relationship that's been brought here today. So thank you very much indeed, and thanks, Nate. You're just doing a great job.
Thanks. Great. So good to have people say that to me. I love being appreciated. Okay, so I'm going to stop our recording here and say goodbye to anybody who's watching. Thank you so much for being with us, and I hope that you are successful in your work of changing the world for the better.
Bye-bye.